Hi, everyone. My name is Zainab Khan, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. I am the executive director and co founder of MALA, the Muslim American Leadership Alliance. We are a non for profit, non political, non theological, focused on celebrating the stories of the broad and diverse Muslim American community. And today we have a very special guest, Batouly Camara, that will be joining us. And I am so excited to be able to share her story with our community because I just think it's phenomenal. It's one of the most empowering stories that I've come across. And I'll give just a couple more minutes in case there are people connecting. And Batouly, I will introduce you and we'll dive right in.
Awesome.
And for those of us who are joining us right now, we'll be doing a fireside chat with Batouly Camara. Batouly is a recent graduate of UConn, University of Connecticut, women's basketball forward. She is also the founder of Women and Children's Empowerment, WAKE, which is a nonprofit, which she started in 2017 to empower young women and girls through basketball with clinics and workshops around the world. She also has incredible plans and ambitions to start an all-girls boarding school in Guinea, her family's home country, that would allow girls to play basketball, receive scholarships, and get professional development training. Batouly has also given a very inspiring TED Talk and is the author of a children's book that was recently released titled A Basketball Game on Wake Street, which portrays a group of diverse girls coming together to play basketball. So she also is the recipient of ESPN's humanitarian Billie Jean King Youth Leadership Award, which celebrates and honors youth who use the power of sport as a catalyst for change and make a positive impact. So, Batouly, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and the work that you do. It's an honor and a privilege.
We also have to be, we're so grateful that you're here because you're also in Spain right now.
Yes,
and so wonderful. So let's start with your journey. How did you come across, like a lot of people that are watching or listening, how did Batouly come across basketball? How did this passion begin? Where did it begin? Where did the journey begin?
I would say my journey began in New York City. New York is such a rich and incredible place. But for me, it started in the house. And as a first generation Guinean woman, that was at the forefront of who I was kind of navigating. And I always say I learned history lessons before fun facts. And it was my mother constantly sharing stories of her upbringing, what it was like growing up, really taking us back to Guinea and really allowing us to understand the opportunity that we had in front of us. And then you're thrown into New York City and you're in the mix of things. And by the time I was 12 years old, I grew to 5'11" in like one summer. So I was really, really tall and opportunities opened up for me to play sport. But again, I'm so thankful for that base and that foundation I had outside of sport as a person and knowing my roots that allowed me to then navigate through sports with everything that I had because this was an opportunity of a lifetime. That's what it felt like and that's how I treated it. And I began playing basketball and I loved the aspect of sisterhood. It was never about that competing or understanding the game, but it was about sisterhood and connecting with powerful women. And I realized that would lead me for the rest of my life is connecting with incredible women like yourself. And at a young age, I loved that through sport and had the ability to play. And as I said, I picked up the game quickly for my love of it, for what it did and how I was able to now navigate my life in a new way. And went to boarding school at the age of 14, which was really, really tough. And I thank my mother for being so courageous and allowing me to go. And that was where things really shifted for me in a holistic sense and really becoming the person and the woman that I was, people say you're destined to become. And a lot of that took place at Blair, my mom having the courage to allow me to go to boarding school and to continue to develop and work on my skills.
So going back just a little, wow, Okay, we only have an hour. Going back, so tell us a little bit about your family. Your mom, you have siblings. Tell us a little bit about the dynamics of that.
I was the youngest for a long time. My mom, like I said, my mom and dad, born and raised in Guinea, West Africa, came here for an opportunity at a new life. And my father, he was working. He's a doctor, and worked in the hospital setting, and understood the opportunities that were available here in the healthcare system, and would often talk to us about that. And then my siblings, I have an older sister and an older brother who both played sports, but really, really at such a young age. Like, I remember the other time I was sitting down and, as I said, really learning history lessons before fun facts. And I'm like, why do you all have me watching like Roots at like 9? Like, what is this? And it just says like cultural immersion, like, listen, like, this is what it is. Like, my sister would read, I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings by Maya Angelou, and just loved books and literature, and this global, just wanted global experiences. And I had that at a young age. And when you're the youngest, you kind of learn from your siblings, and they poured so much into me at an early age, but also really supported me through guiding and figuring out who I was through it all.
Tell us about your journey at UConn.
So after Blair Academy, I had the opportunity to go to the University of Connecticut, which was absolutely life-changing experience. And I think back to kind of my official visit, and we're sitting there, and during these times you have dinner, and you're there, and it just felt absolutely surreal. Starting to play basketball, following this program, Maya Moore being my favorite player, and now sitting here across from this incredible coach saying, "Do you want to come to the University of Connecticut?" And I would definitely say, even if I was there for a minute or a second or a day, I was never going to come back the same. When you go to a program like that is so rich in tradition, and the amazing legends who come out of there, there's something special there. And that's exactly what was, and how I would describe my experience, just absolutely incredible and absolutely special. And it has grown me so much. I had some of the most incredible experiences of my life that I'm still putting into words. But I definitely learned so much, and so thankful to have spent 4 years playing there, competing, learning, and growing.
And from there now, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, what you're currently working on in professional sports? And then we'll go into your nonprofit and your authorhood journey as well.
Absolutely. So as graduation came, and it was quarantine, and I was figuring out the next steps in my life, I received my master's, and I was like, well, do I want to continue my education? What do I want at the core of everything? Do I pursue Wake full time now? And I just sat back, and I always think of this quote: remember the little girl you're fighting for. And sometimes I just envision, 12-year-old Batouly and fighting through sports and enjoying it and loving it. And I said, yeah, fulfill that dream, fulfill that purpose. You don't always get the opportunity to, and, I have the ability to. And so when the opportunity opened up for me to come to Spain and to play professionally and to continue my career and live out my dream, it was an absolute no-brainer. And I'm so thankful that my family supported me and encouraged me, because they know, this is for a 12-year-old Batouly, just fulfilling that promise that she made to herself to put her best foot forward.
Absolutely. Now, you also recently gave a TED Talk titled A Mirror of Hope, Seeing is Believing. And we will be sharing all of the links with our viewers for the TED Talk, for the nonprofit, for the book. But tell us a little bit about the TED Talk. And you give very, very powerful, inspirational statements in that on overcoming adversity, overcoming challenges, looking forward to the future. These are very powerful messages of hope and empowerment that we need right now, especially post-COVID. Going through a global pandemic where all of us are separate, yet, want to maintain these personal connections. Tell us a little bit about that journey with the TED Talk, what it's about. What was it like giving it?
I think the first part of that TED Talk was, the first thing that I think about is my mentor. I had an amazing mentor named Sinead Jones, who constantly reminded me of who I was and who was the first person to tell me to go soul searching. And I'm like, what is that? How do you even do that? How do you get there? But constantly telling me to get in myself. She said, because that is where the place, that is just where you are, and once you figure that out, I think life will be a lot easier for you. And I'm so thankful that she offered me that piece of advice at the age of 12 years old. And I think of Brene Brown daring greatly to go and venture into that, to figure out who I was. And when I went to Guinea, I constantly have these flashbacks and reminders of 12-year-old Batouly, and I was confronted by like 30 of them at that time. And they were saying, I want to be better than you at basketball. And I said, you absolutely can. And it was about providing access to sport, resources to play and opportunities to live out their dream. And that was it. That was the mission. And when I came back, I wanted to do a TED Talk. And I said to my mentor, I don't know what I want to do this TED Talk on. She said, you have not stopped talking about your trip to Guinea and how you feel compelled to do something. Talk about that, share that, walk us through that experience. And at that moment, she saw who I was and allowed me to see who I was in that reflection. And I just journeyed back to Guinea, back to that time, back to who I was, what I wanted. And the second is, once I started Women and Kids Empowerment, and at that time I had a mentor, another great mentor asked me, are you willing to fight for change you may not see happen? Like, are you willing to fight for change you may not see happen? Is it that important to you? Is it that real to you? And I said, absolutely. And that was where Women and Kids Empowerment stemmed from, that I want to put every fiber of my being into this. And one of the key things that I didn't talk about when I was younger was my first WNBA game. When I saw players and I saw the game at another level, it sparked something for me. And the first thing I thought about, seeing is believing. It became a reality to me that I was able to now play and fulfill almost 10, 12 years later. And, seeing is believing, mirrors of hope. And just those girls, by seeing me, felt like they had an opportunity to fight for their dreams. And that was more important than anything. And being that and having an opportunity where I left in a TED Talk to say I stand as one, but I come as 10,000. Those are 10,000 dreams that should not be silenced and do deserve it and are worth it.
That's very profound. I know I watched it several times, and I'll share the link with our audience also so they can have an opportunity to view it, because it's absolutely, you can see how much it comes from the heart. How did you prepare? How was the preparation for it? It just kind of came?
Oh my goodness. The preparation actually was, I would never forget the preparation. And I don't talk about it enough because it was just such a unique point in my life. It all happened during the Sweet 16 and the Final Four. So when, initially it was like it's 50 and then it cuts down to 4, cuts down to 2. And the first process where I applied and the second I came for an interview, we were going to the Sweet 16. We were only going to be in Connecticut for a day, and that was the only day to pitch it. And basically you're in a room with about 5 or 6 judges, and you have 5 minutes to share your story. What is your story about? 5 minutes, no scripts, go. And initially I wanted to do something else about collaboration and, but my mentor was like, be real. And I just walked them through my journey to Guinea. And I was like, listen, if you choose me, I'm getting on a flight tomorrow to go to the Final Four. At that time we were in Dallas and that's it. And they were like, okay. And as we were on our flight to Dallas, I got the email and they're like, you've been selected. And so at that point, it's crazy how things happen. We lost in the first round, which is so painful. And then I come back, but I made it in time for the TED Talk. And so I'm on the plane preparing, but at the same time, we've lost this game and I'm just devastated. And I just continue to say, okay, how do I memorize? How do I do a 13-minute speech with no notes and lecture cards? And so constantly thinking about that. But the preparation was something I would never forget, but so worth it.
Wow, that just shows your strength and your commitment. That's incredible. Thank you. I know a lot of people don't know about that. Now, tell us a little bit about Wake, how you came. Obviously, this starting a nonprofit was inspired through your professional ambitions, through your educational goals and aspirations, and also your going back to your roots. So it's like almost like this combination of all your experiences that's blossomed. Can you tell us a little bit about Wake?
Absolutely. Women and Kids Empowerment started back in 2017. And as I mentioned, I went to Guinea just to hold a basketball camp, to connect, to get to know my community and my extended family. And once I got there, it felt like a whole different world opened up to me. And I vividly remember the last conversation I had before I got on the airplane. And one of the girls, her name is Bintu. Bintu is absolutely incredible. And she would come to the stadium every single day. She was there first. And she would come dressed in a dress and flip-flops. And she would sell these little things. We call it bisap and ginger, which is like a hibiscus and, ginger. And she'd send in little bags. And she wouldn't go home until she finished selling. But at the stadium, when she came to work, when she came to play basketball, we would try our best to buy the entire container and free up her day. And she would spend the entire day at the gym. And she just loved the game, picked up the game so quickly. I saw myself in her. And I remember leaving, she said, I just want a pink headband and I'm going to continue improving. This is a girl who, like I said, flip-flops and able enough people who love her and know her work ethic to get her sneakers. And at that time when I left, I just remember her saying, I'm going to be better than you. I am better than you, but I need an opportunity to fight for my dreams. And I don't want it. I don't want it easy, but I want the opportunity to fight for my dreams. And that was one of the most distinct conversations for me in so many ways, because I went back and I just was replaying it in my mind. I felt compelled, if anyone, it had to be for Bintu, if anyone, and if anything. And then it's so beautiful when you come back and the world opens up and you feel like you're in alignment. You start to connect with people who are in the same field, who are empowering girls, who are empowering women through sport, and things seem a little bit more feasible. And that was the first step of just research and pushing and connecting with amazing people in the field. And then from there, now you get into funding and learning so much as a founder, but saying, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I may not know it all, but I'm going to do whatever it takes because someone did it for me. And that was a process. And I'm so thankful to have grown, for Wake to have now been to India, to be back in Guinea 3 times now, to have gone to France, over 700 kids that we've worked with across 33 coaches across 4 different continents today. And who knew? And my one goal was there's so many Bintus and maybe they just need an opportunity to play the game, to find themselves and to reclaim their lives through sport, even for a day, for a second, for a minute, because that's the communities in which they're in. And I think they're stronger together. And I'm so happy that today Bintu is going to school full time. She's strong, she's balling, and we're figuring out the next steps for her. But she's had an incredible journey, and that's what it's been for me.
Wow. Well, congratulations on this. And again, we'll share the link to Wake with everybody that's watching. Doing this kind of work is not easy, and starting an international nonprofit where you've been able to reach the lives of so many people in just 3 years is incredible. So, in addition to being a basketball champion and a legend and a humanitarian, you're a philanthropist and also a founder and visionary in the sense where you're seeing these problems, you're tackling these social issues, way in advance and doing it. You're actually doing it. So thank you for that. That's incredible. I also want to touch upon the book, the recent children's book that you wrote. I know you had done a lot of research behind it. You were very careful about making sure that characters are represented in their form and the natural setting of the way children are. Tell us a little bit about that.
That book was a second dive into my soul in a completely different way. As I said, I grew up in New York City where pickup basketball is everything. You go out, there's so many, Rucker Park, West Forest, so many legendary courts and games that have been played and people who have blessed those courts. And so that's what I grew up doing and falling in love with the game. And as I went to school and then pursued my master's, it was about who has access to sport. and looking at sport through a critical lens, because sport is a microcosm for society and for life, and who has access to that and who doesn't. And I talk about sport in such an amazing way, to reclaim lives. But then it made me think back to, who was I playing with? Who was out there and who wasn't? And it was it was through this experience when I was in India. And again, they're like, you want to play pickup? And I'm from New York. So I'm like, of course, I'm always here to play pickup. And it was my first time playing pickup basketball game with kids signing to one another. And it was such a unique experience. I was immersed. And then I went to Guinea and now playing with amazing, Paralympians. And I was like, this is incredible. And why wasn't this, where was I and where were they? And why wasn't this available? And how do you depict that? And I said, what would kind of my utopia look like? What are my experiences in sport? What is the kind of sport that I want to play in the world I want to live in? And it's representative of everyone with unique abilities across diverse backgrounds. And not saying this is a full story, but sharing a snippet. And I want people to leave this book saying, what about this character? I want this book to lead to more questions, because I think more questions lead to more insightful answers. And I think more answers lead to us just feeling more connected and understanding that we're more similar than we are diverse and apart. And so I just really wanted the book to reflect that. And I think girls in sport, just seeing each other, seeing themselves. I want a girl to pick up this book and say, I see myself, maybe in a quality or two. And my voice is heard through this book and using this platform for everyone and anyone.
And this book is called A Basketball Game on Wake Street. It's
Yes.
a paperback. It was just released in June of 2020. Mm-hmm. And I do want to say I have ordered it. I do have it. I've read it. And I have a 2-year-old toddler at home. So we do a lot of picture books right now. But I do want to say the illustrations are absolutely beautiful in the book.
That's my favorite part. And oh my goodness, the author, her name is Shifa Nisa, beautiful Muslim woman. And she was literally the first person who was like, how can you bring this book to life without words? That was her sole purpose and her goal. How can I bring these characters to life? And I absolutely love it. Sometimes I go back, I have the book. Sometimes I go back like, God sent me to her, because she's amazing. and she loves this work, and I think she saw the importance of it, which was able to reflect the work that she did.
And it's so rare where you see the words and the pictures combined.
Yeah.
And you see life in the faces of these characters. It's just a very, very beautiful book. It's called A Basketball Game on Wake Street. And it's also available in Spanish. It's also being translated into different languages.
Yes, because I think we don't talk about inclusion enough. We don't talk about access enough. I didn't want to just be diverse and unique, but I want it to be accessible to everyone. And again, you grew up in New York City, this huge melting pot. And now I'm here in Spain, I've been to France, and I want those kids who I've been able to coach to read this and feel connected to this book because they're connected to me. And that's part of their stories as well.
That's incredible. Now, I know we're covering a lot of different facets of your life here. And it's, it's so condensed. It's trying to fit in so much. There's so much of you to be condensed in a short hour. And we already have a few questions coming in from the audience. But I want to go back into, there's some key themes that you keep discussing. One of them is obviously heritage and roots. That's something that's very important to you. And I've seen interviews, I've read interviews of you, you speaking, how much, there's a beautiful picture of you receiving your award, the jersey with your mom in it. Obviously, your heritage and your roots is something that you take deep pride in. So tell us a little bit about navigating through that identity as a New Yorker, as a young woman, as a basketball player, as a child of immigrants. Like, how did that kind of all mesh and mold you?
At a young age, I was so embarrassed. I was like anything but standing out. And I remember the second WNBA game I actually went to, I went with my mom, and she had on her most fanciest African attire, and I was like, oh my goodness. And they put her on the Jumbotron, and I was completely mortified. I was like, this is the worst day ever. Like, how could this be happening to me? But I think there were so many moments like that where she was just so proud. she was so proud, and she has every right to be. And at a young age, I didn't know that. It was just the less amount of attention, please don't do this. But she couldn't not be who she was. And there were so many questions of when you're in this journey of soul searching that you go back to the root, you go back to that foundation. And you constantly ask, who am I, at the core of this? And being a Guinean woman was such a strong part of my life that I hadn't realized. But in the subconscious of the things that I did, of how I navigated life, of realities that I knew existed beyond me, just really, really was a huge part of me. And as I got older, I started to appreciate it more. And I'm like, Mom, wear this one, wear the biggest yellow one ever. Show that. And because there's a whole country and a whole group of people who are back home and who are proud and who have every right to be proud. And I love that. And I would never want to silence that. I would never want to. And that made me who I was. And it wasn't until I really accepted who I was and all the identities that I held, not saying that I was limited to them, but really appreciated and embraced them and was open to being myself through them, that the world opened up and I was able to connect with more people through similar experiences. And I was like, I wouldn't trade that for the world.
You talk a lot about youth. And you're quite young yourself right now, so it's fascinating to see that, because I'm listening to your story. I'm like, what advice would Batouly give 12-year-old Batouly?
I would say, let your mom wear the dress. My goodness, stop being crazy. But I would tell Batouly, spend more time learning and embracing and not just dismissing or trying to quiet who you are. Live out loud and be proud of that, because there are so many people who are waiting for you to tap into who you are, to connect with you, to grow with you, to learn with you, to experience you. And until you know who you are, then it's going to be a tough journey. So, let your mom wear the dress and listen to her stories and be proud of who you are, and that we're always on a journey and we're never arriving.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you talk a lot about being authentic, being real, going back to yourself. Like, tell us a little bit about that, because it's like a spiritual transgression, almost like on a personal note, where, it's like the doors have opened, the wings have, like, they're up, and now it's like you're also touching the lives of hundreds of young children across the world. Thousands of young women that watch you and are looking at like, I want to be like that, because I've never seen a role model that looked like me, or a mentor that looked like me, or somebody in media or sports that looks like me or has a name like mine. Tell us about that. Tell me a little bit about that journey of authenticity and self.
Even you saying that, even one person being inspired, it shakes me to my core, because I know that feeling of inspiration. Like what do we call to be inspired? It's something that happens in spirit. It's a shift. It's a moment. It's an awakening, and being able to connect deeply at a split second sometimes, or for moments, or for months, but to really be inspired is something that I'm easily inspired, and something that I love about myself. Wherever I go, I'm like, that's amazing. I love that. And so when I think of someone feeling that way about me, I'm like, that's incredible. Like, wow, thank you. Thank you for connecting, and thank you for being open enough to connect. But I would say that aspect of authenticity, when I envision myself or people who are authentic, I envision strong trees. And usually you think of Africa and these symbols of huge trees. The biggest thing is the foundation. It's the root. No matter how far the leaves go or how far they branch out, they are rooted in good soil. We are rich in things. We are rich in ways that money can't buy. We are rich, and we have so many infinite possibilities. And I think you have to be authentic in that sense. And it just means staying rooted and staying firm long enough that when your roots branch out, that you know where to come back. Your home frequency, your base, and you have people who water you there. And so I think when you can leave from that place, you can go as far, you can stretch as wide, but you are always able to find yourself and go back to yourself. And not in a beautiful way, but I think in a real way. in a real way that allows you to stay who you are.
I think you have a very profound gift with words as well. And I do want to definitely say that one of the most powerful aspects of your book that stood out to me was that sports transcends all boundaries. So you have this group of diverse girls, disabilities, religions, cultures, languages, all of that is off, but sports is the connector. That love and that passion and that unity of what you had said, what you stated, why you love basketball, because it was that sisterhood, that unity, that bond. Yeah. And that is so profound. I mean, that really touched my soul, because as a Muslim, as an American, as a woman, as a child of immigrants, as a mom of a mixed heritage young boy, I think to myself, there are so many labels that we put and create, but what's really bringing us together? And I just love that story. I can't stress enough to everybody watching, you have to order this book on Amazon. It's for kids, but actually it's a wonderful lesson for adults today. So everybody order it.
Yes.
Are there plans to do more? Because I could definitely see a series of books.
That book, like I said, it took all of me, but I think every project does, and I think that's why I love it so much. So I've been thinking about different things. Well, do you go to the aspect of now unraveling these girls' story, or do you go in the aspect of now Aisha's choosing a basketball coach, and women in leadership position? We're being intentional, people, or what's the next step? But I think, like I said, the beauty is you're always journeying, and I love when people are like, what about this character? What about this person? What about this idea? I'm like, yes, you're thinking, you're engaged. Do it, write it. I'll support you. But it's not for one person to write. And it's constantly being written. So write it. We need it. So anyone who wants to write a book, write it. If this inspires you, continue the story. You have my blessings. We need it. It's so important, but write it.
Speaking of, sharing your story, what are some of the challenges maybe that you may have overcome in sharing? Because coming to a point of authenticity and sharing oneself it takes a tremendous amount of opening up and self-reflection. What were some of the challenges, and what were some of the triumphs that you've discovered during the storytelling journey, from basketball to the media to nonprofit to mentoring to authoring a children's book on a global level? What was that journey kind of like?
It was not easy. And I think that is such a great question. Thank you for asking that, because I don't think we ask that enough. And I think we see the glitz and the glams, but we don't really say, this was tough. It can get lonely when you feel like no one understands. It can be confusing when people say, why this book? Why these many girls? Because I think it's important and to understand not everyone may see your vision. But I have also learned through many experiences that sometimes people ask you why, and then in a few years they ask you how. And that has been really hard to accept, that not everyone's going to be there at that moment for you. Even those close to you, but it's your journey. It's you against yourself in this arena called life, and figuring out what are you going to do to come out on the other side of that, on the other side of this book, on the other side of this nonprofit, on the other side of your career. How are you constantly going to keep showing up and fighting for yourself? And I think of Brene Brown's quote. I love that. She's like, you either hustle for you either, it's one of my favorite quotes. I have to get it. Because it's just so encompassing of what you just said. And she says, you either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your own worthiness. And I think there's been so many moments where I've been tested. And one of them most recently, again, on the Muslim American Leadership Alliance was, I call it, was it D1 or Dean, playing at the highest point of my life at the University of Connecticut. And how now you're in the arena of life and you're trying to live authentically. You're trying to be yourself. And now you're visibly hijab, and now you're wearing hijab visibly. And not everyone thinks that. Not everyone ever approves. People think you're doing it for attention. And I'm like, there's a lot of things you can do for attention. And I hope I wouldn't choose something this hard to get attention for. And you have these tests and these really tough questions that you have to dig back deep. But I give that analogy again of a tree being rooted and saying, this is who I am at the core. And my leaves may sway and some may fall off, but maybe that wasn't who I was in the first place. And those that do fall, that doesn't take away from who I am. That's just me growing new leaves and coming into a new season. So it hasn't been easy. But I think I have like I said, I'm easily inspired by my mom and by workers who get up every single day. The custodian who no one's there watching but doesn't miss a spot. I'm inspired by those people to continue to show up, because that's half the battle. And conversations like this keep me going, because it makes it feel a little bit more worth it.
I can honestly say the three words that pop out to me from just talking to you. We've talked before. This is the first time we've done a live chat, but strength, power, and empathy. Let's talk about empathy, because that is your book. That is a lesson on empathy for the entire world, especially right now. It can be tough. It can be tough when you think that you're kind of the lone one out there. But I think it's just so incredibly powerful that you shared that, because I think especially right now, as this lockdown occurred, people have been impacted economically, physically, emotionally, the social situation in this country right now, the climate, the, trauma of so many changes, that one can begin to lose hope. And that's something that I think that you have a very strong message of, is instilling hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, have the audacity to hope, having the audacity to dream. Like this is for me. And so I remember there was times where I limited myself, and I tell everyone, have the audacity to speak life into dead situations. To say this may be what's in front of me, but I don't see this for myself. 12-year-old Batouly, you may not make a lamp, but I see greatness in you. And I think in moments when your back is against the wall, the biggest thing you can do is say, I see beyond this moment. I see beyond this present reality for who I am and what I am. And I'm going to have the audacity to hope. And I think at a time right now, that's the most courageous thing anyone can do.
Yeah. Hope and empathy. You've got it. I have a couple questions for you from the audience. The first one is what is your experience in playing in Spain, playing professional basketball in Spain? How is that? And then the other question is, what is it like being as a Muslim woman athlete in Europe?
This story has come full circle. I was going to share it on Instagram, but this story has come full circle. So it has been such an incredible time right now. It's super interesting right now, but in terms of the process, because of COVID right now, it was a little bit tougher, but usually I'll just walk you through the steps. Usually you find an agent, you make the decision, okay, I want to play professionally. You work to find an agent through connections, there are online resources. And then once you're connected with an agent, you kind of speak about what some things that you want. For me, safety was huge. I want to be in a safe country where I feel safe, at least, or in a safe community, and practicing. And you kind of go through that checklist of what you want, how you envision your professional career, what country you want to play in. Was it France or Belgium? Especially for women, there's many opportunities to play overseas, more than it is in the States, which is only the WNBA. And then from there, it was a long, visa process. My goodness, a monster visa process, fingerprints, so many documents. But then you wake up and alhamdulillah, you're here. and now you're practicing. And some days I wake up like, this is my job. Oh my goodness, this is my job. And it feels like it. I love it, but it feels like it definitely is the job. And you're in the gym and you're constantly improving. But that is usually the overarching process, is finding an agent and finding a country and a team, and then going out there. And the second question was, sorry, what was the second question?
Describe the experience as being a Muslim woman athlete and in Europe,
Yeah. So why I was so excited about that question was it's not easy. And I remember I had a glimpse of it when I went to France last year for a month and a half. And it was one of those things where I think people just didn't understand. It was, wow, like you're here, you're playing, like it just was, people just couldn't understand it. And that's often, what I receive in playing and constantly being the only one. So again, you kind of get into a space where you feel super alone, but I'm so happy. Dia is my Muslim sister who plays basketball, and she understands. And so you feel less alone within that global community, but only seeing yourself. And now I'm here in Spain, and I'm working with a really incredibly talented director to kind of capture my story of, it's Bilquis Abdul Qadir, fought for the hijab ban in FIBA years ago. And I connected with Bilquis when I was in college at the University of Connecticut, not knowing, just by God's plan, not knowing that I'm benefiting from the exact same rule that made her stop playing. And I was just like, I had such a surreal moment, and I'm wearing the hijab that Ibtihaj sent to me, my first ever Nike Pro hijab. I'm wearing that one of my first games, and it was just a full circle moment. And I talked to Bilquis, and I said, I'm here in Spain. She said, Tuli, that was the only country I wanted to go to. And now being the first hijab player to be in Spain, it's just like, oh my goodness. So it feels completely bigger than myself. And she's like, keep going. So you never know where things are being planted and rooted. And I hope I can share that story in a beautiful way of how those two sisters really guided and helped me through my journey. And now, again, benefiting from that in more ways than I can describe has been incredible. And those are good moments. But also knowing, okay, sometimes you're the only one in the arena, but I stand as one, but I come as 10,000, and continue to have that at the forefront of my mind.
Wow. Ooh, my heart skipped.
We're connected. That's above all else, like we're connected.
I know. No, my heart's skipped a beat. I will tell you one thing. Mala was invited last year to Spain, Barcelona and Madrid. And we were actually connecting with youth there because a lot of people don't know Spain has actually one of the largest Muslim diaspora communities in the entire world. And that includes Pakistani, West African, East African, and also Eastern Europe. So just a little tidbit of knowledge there. But how do you kind of, in Europe, it's a little bit more challenging to shift multiple identities, like to be a African woman, athlete, Spanish, American, but here it's like you're an African American Muslim athlete from Guinea who's, so it's like what I've seen also is that in America, and the positive ways that you can shift multiple identities. You could be a woman, you could be a rock star, you could be an author, you could have all these different fluid layers of your identity versus in Europe, it might be a little tough, to do that. Have you experienced that in yourself, like in that?
I have not been able to put it into words, but you said it perfectly. I've been trying to figure it out. I've really been trying to figure that out for the longest, but I would 100% agree. Definitely feel more fluid in the States, and here it seems a bit more rigid of who you are, just like a Guinean Muslim. That's it. Like it's like a Guinean Muslim. That's it. So for very, very rigid here. And I think that's a great point. And things I've experienced. So now I'm like, yeah, I haven't been able to put that into words, but she said that perfectly. So true.
It's hard to say I'm a Spanish, Pakistani, Muslim, European, but I'm a Muslim American woman of Afghan, Pakistani heritage. It's just so different because do you include Europe? Do you include Spain? Do you include French? Do you include your ancestry? It's a little bit more tougher. That's actually the feedback that we had gotten from a lot of the youth there, because it's quite different. How we're able to connect, how we're able to see, how we're able to envision ourselves. I think here in the US, we have a lot more of a fluid kind of a way to navigate that system.
Right. That is amazing. I'm definitely going to think about that later because that is so true.
It's a little tough there, I know.
Yeah.
It's when you're asked to introduce yourself in a different context, and then it's like, the words that you're saying, it doesn't resonate with your audience. So I could definitely empathize with that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tell me a little now, as we kind of wrap this up, and this has been, this was like, sorry for kind of pummeling all these questions on you so fast. These are like deep questions. So I really want to thank you. And I know it's very late where you are also. So it means the world for you to be able to join us and talk about yourself. Even a glimpse of Batouly's life, I just think is so beautiful, empowering, and so needed, especially now. What's something that you really want to share with everyone that's watching, that's listening, that maybe you look back at, 6 months from now, we have our next conversation. What's kind of the takeaway that you really want to share with this conversation?
I would definitely say honor the space that you're in. Honor space that you're in and where you come from, and don't be afraid to go there. Don't be afraid to ask those questions, and don't be afraid to put a piece of yourself out in the world and see how that's received. So again, I always say Bernard Brown, but living vulnerably, I think that's the best way to really have great connection and to feel alive in this world. So don't be afraid of that. And I want to look back 6 months, a year from today, and people hold that message and say, yeah, I had an opportunity to be vulnerable, and that was me being brave in that moment, and that I'm continuing to do that, and I'm continuing to live my life that way. And right now I'm embarking on another project that you mentioned in the beginning that takes absolutely all of me, and I'm hoping by 6 months it's built. Again, God's time, but that's taking every single part of me, and that is my biggest dream to date, which is creating a transformative place and space for girls to reclaim their lives through sport in Guinea, West Africa. So 6 months from today, I hope I can say, I was vulnerable. I shared experiences. I dared greatly. And now here it is, and more projects to come. But I can't wait. And I hope that everyone and anyone can take that away from this message.
And just for everybody, it's wake-academy.org.
Yes.
So that is Batouly's nonprofit that has touched hundreds of lives across the world. And we're really specifically focusing on Guinea through sports and literacy and empowerment. So I know this is going to be an incredible nonprofit, and you've already, received, in 3 years to be able to do this kind of work, I think is phenomenal on top of your international sports career. And writing a children's book and all the other mentorship that you do. I think one of the most profound things in this conversation that I've been able to also hear is that coming from, you are a sports legend, let's be real. Okay? So as a sports legend, for you to say that vulnerability is also a strength, that is so profound.
Yeah. I mean, not on the court. Disclaimer.
You're a beast on the court. That's a whole different game.
No way. But yeah. And I think the connections and the experiences and this conversation and the work that you do is just amazing. And I would never want to miss out on that because I was not here. I was not present. I didn't want to feel, and I didn't want to show up and give it my all. So I think that's it. I think that's the answer. I mean, I don't know.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Batouly. That means a lot. So again, we'll be sharing the links to Wake, to the children's book, which is also available in English and in Spanish, which is called...
And in 1 month in French. So.
Oh, now in French.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Are there any other languages that's being translated in?
Right now, French and Arabic are my two that we're working to translate in.
Yeah. Awesome. It's called A Basketball Game on Wake Street.
Yes.
It's for children and adults. I think adults will be ordering it. And the illustrations are absolutely beautiful. So I really, really respect that. It's a work of art. And you definitely have a way of words. And we will be sharing your TED Talk also. So people can get just a glimpse of that inspiring woman that's on that stage. And now that we know that you were planning and memorizing this on a plane back, that makes it, I'm going to go back and rewatch it.
No. You see everything then.
Thank you so much, Batouly, for sharing just a snippet of your life and your heart and your soul with us. This meant so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the work that you do. This space, this opportunity, I can't thank you enough, and I really appreciate it.
And I know somewhere, there's always going to be somebody that's watching that's like, you know what? I'm going to do better. I'm going to be like her. I want to be like her. I want to be like her. That's amazing. And that's what we should keep striving for. So thank you for being such an amazing role model, mentor in our community. And we'll be having another conversation where now we'll be talking to 18-year-old Batouly and seeing what was it like.
I know, right? Oh my God.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And thank you everybody for joining us today. This was really just one part of a series of discussions and sessions and parts of joy and human connection that we have with Mala that we're so eager to share with everybody. And Batouly's story was definitely one that everybody needs to know about. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, yeah.